Hello, my name is Helen Lawson. I'm a lead content designer at Co-op Digital, and I specialise in writing content for the Co-op Funeral Care website and topics surrounding death, dying and bereavement. This is my talk, Death and Other Difficult Words, written because I'm very passionate about the words that we use to describe this life event and to spread the word for people to be more honest. You can see my Twitter handle down there is @contenthelen. If you want to tweet anything about this talk or ask me any questions, please do get in touch on Twitter. Here we go. This is an old saying and not one that I wrote, but talking about death doesn't make you die, just like talking about sex doesn't make you pregnant. But we do seem to be reluctant to talk about death with friends, family, and in business. And I think we could all benefit from being more honest in this area. This is not quite the same as my talk when I do it live. Sometimes it can be upsetting or triggering. I talk about my own experiences with bereavement as we go through, and I talk about other things to do with death, obviously. And if you have experienced something recently, or if it triggers something, then I understand if you want to stop watching. Normally, I would say that, but in case anybody wants to leave the room, this is a bit different. I'm going to tell you why it matters to me and why I'm so passionate about this particular subject. My brother Andrew died in a motorbike accident 20 years ago this year, and that changed everything for me. Of course, it's devastating. It's really difficult. I was only 25, and I had to organise the funeral because my mum wasn't up to it, and that taught me a lot as well. But I think one of the reasons why I'm really passionate about the words and talking to people and reaching out to people is because when my mum, about a week after Andrew's accident, my mum needed to go and get something from the shop. I wasn't there. And it was the first time that she'd been out of the house in over a week since the accident. And as she was walking to the shop, she saw a woman coming towards her, somebody that she'd known all of her life, been to school with her and everything. And she was sort of steeling herself ready to greet this person and to hear her, what's she going to say? She got herself ready. And this person crossed the road, looked at Mum, looked in pure shock, and then ran away and didn't talk to her about it. And Mum told me when she got home, she rang me, and she didn't go out again for a while after that, a few days after that, and it sort of unsettled me a little bit. And I think one of the reasons is because this woman, she had the best intentions. She really didn't want to upset my mum further, but that's the crux of it. She didn't want to upset my mum, and that's why she didn't talk to her. And by not talking to her, it upset her lots more. This is one thing that we need to remember when somebody loses somebody that they love, is that they're already upset. Whatever you say to them is not going to make things worse. You're not going to walk up to them and say something so clumsy that you're going to make everything far, far worse. They're already upset. And by ignoring them, that's just even more upsetting. I've written a set of content principles for Co-op Funeral Care. These have evolved lots and lots and lots over the years, but I suppose the principle has remained the same. And I think they're really important. And every time we get a freelancer or somebody coming to write for Co-op, I always make sure I take them through this exact same presentation that I'm showing you so that they understand the importance of what we do. We have to be honest. If as funeral directors, we can't say the word death or died or dead, then who can? This is what we do. We are professionals. We know what we're doing, and we need to be able to speak the truth about this sort of thing. And I think this is really important. We don't tell people how they're feeling, because how could we possibly know? Death affects everybody differently, and it's not our place to say, you must be upset by this. We don't know. So we try and avoid things like that. We don't make any assumptions. Not everybody thinks of the person who died as somebody they loved. An example of this is when a funeral director friend of mine told me somebody came to visit a relative of theirs, and she stood with them and she said, I'll leave you alone with him for the moment. And the woman just turned to her and said, nope, I'm going now. I just needed to check that he was dead. That was what she needed to do. Who are we to say that that's right or wrong? We're not. It's not our place. So we don't make any assumptions about people's relationships and situations. If you've ever trained to be a first aider, I did when I was in guides, or if you listen to paramedics, the first thing that they do when they go and find somebody who's injured, whatever level of injury that is, you tell them they're going to be okay. It's what you do. Don't worry, you're in safe hands. We're going to look after you. And we need to do the same thing as funeral directors, because it's not quite the same, but if somebody is distressed, we need to let them know that this part of organising something is going to be okay. Organising the funeral, we will help you. Grief, bereavement, the many years that you will spend after that, of course, is a very different topic. But organising the funeral is something that we are going to help you do. So please don't worry. I say we don't whisper, and I realise that sounds a little fancy, but I'm quite deaf. I'm 50% deaf. And when I had to organise Andrew's funeral, the funeral director spoke so quietly. Honestly, I could not hear him, and I felt like screaming at him, going, I'm sad. I'm not a Ming vase. I'm not going to break. Speak up. I need to hear you. And I think I use that as a principle. We need to speak up and speak confidently about what we do and how we can do it. We want to inspire people, really. And this means not everybody knows that you can do anything at a funeral. Pretty much, so long as it's legal and decent, you can do almost anything. You don't have to hold it in a church. You don't have to hold it in a venue. You can hold a funeral in your garden. There are rules about how we dispose of a body, how we do that part. Cremations, burials, they are governed, but funerals are not. You can do them anywhere, and you can wear any colour. You can use any vehicle as a hearse. And I think it's our job to inspire people, because if you can look back on the funeral that you did and say to yourself, we did well there, we did right by them, they would have liked that, then that, for me, is a job well done, because that will set you on to a better journey through grief and bereavement. If you can look back and think, didn't we do well? He would have loved that. That's what I believe. Euphemisms, you will have heard them, you will have had them said to you, you will have even said them. I've said them, all of these, except for departed. Perhaps we use them a lot because we feel like it's easier, perhaps less harsh, a little bit nicer. But they can actually be quite misleading and confusing, especially to children who's, if they're just beginning to learn the English language, we need to use truthful words, the right words. This is a true story. A bereavement counsellor told me once that she was looking after a young girl whose mum had died. And when she heard her mum had died, she was told that her mum had passed away. And then a few months later, her sister passed out at school, and that's what they told her. And all she heard was the word passed. So she instantly thought that her sister had died too. Imagine that horrifying few minutes when you thought that had happened. And that could have been avoided by using the proper words. Child Bereavement UK are a wonderful charity. I've done some work with them in the past, and I think they lead on this as well. This is really, really crucial. If you have to tell a child that somebody has died, that is what you should say. You can do it gently and sensitively, like this example here on the screen. Grandad had been ill for some time and now he has died. They can't confuse that. It doesn't make it right. It's still going to hurt them, but it's the right words to use because they will be able to understand you. I remember being in a room with people looking at some creative for funeral care, and the words passed away were written in some content, and I penned them out and said, we don't want to say passed away, we need to say died. And the ad agency person said to me, well, isn't it nicer to say passed away? Well, there isn't anything really nice about death, is there? Of course there isn't. And a euphemism won't soften the blow. We can stay away from that. I say all of this, and I say all of these things with real confidence and real belief in what I'm telling you, but I would never say to a funeral director, you must say died. I would never say to them, you must say this or that, because they are brilliant at their jobs. And one of the number one skills that you have to have in order to be a funeral director is to be empathetic. And one of the ways to be empathetic is to mirror language as it comes across. So if somebody's sitting in front of you and says, my mum has passed away, and if they want to say back, I'm sorry to hear your mum passed away, that's okay. That's absolutely okay. This is not about putting words in funeral directors' mouths or your mouth or mine. This is about getting content right on the website for a website about funerals. not telling people what to say. There are some words to avoid when you're writing about funerals and death and bereavement, I believe. And I suppose this one is very much industry and business related for the work that I do, which is the word deceased. We don't use that as a front of house word. It's back of house speak. We have a system that we use, an app that I worked on actually called Guardian, which is a funeral arranging software that we built within Co-op. And we use the word deceased a lot there because it's a singular word to describe who they are. And there I think it's appropriate, but I would never put the word deceased in anything client facing. We call them the person who has died. Can sometimes be a bit of a mouthful, but it's the right thing to do. And there are some other words to avoid as well, like the word like. Which coffin would you like? Well, actually, I don't want any sort of coffin. Nobody wants to buy a coffin. I don't like coffins. We say need or want because you need a coffin. You need to choose a coffin, but it's not something that you'd like to do, even though there are some fantastic coffins available these days, picture coffins and willow and all sorts of things. There's some amazing products out there. It's still not something that you'd like to buy. You might want to order flowers, but you don't need to. So we just use those words, need and want, never like. Simon Bramble, who was supposed to be my co-host at this event and wasn't available, he works for the DWP. He's head of content over there, I believe. And they have done a lot of research into this type of language and what's needed, because they have to deal with people that have been widowed and they're trying to look at their universal credit. And even though sometimes it could be overwhelming for people to see those words, it's still, they discovered the absolute right thing to do, to be upfront and clear and use words like died and funeral, just to help people understand what they need to do. This is something that sort of only really occurred to me recently. When we were doing a review of existing content on the site, we did say a lot that we know this is going to be difficult. We know this is going to be difficult. And I just thought, actually, why are we telling people this is going to be difficult? When you go to the dentist, you don't sit in the chair and they come towards you with a drill saying, this is going to hurt, because you'd flinch. You would brace yourself. You would possibly shut your mouth. I don't know. But dentists reassure you. A little bit like we said earlier, be reassuring. Not, this is going to be difficult. That changed a lot of how we speak in funeral care, actually. This was quite an important moment, I thought. Attitudes, definitely changing. You'll have possibly seen yourself that funerals are modernizing. It's becoming more and more acceptable and even requested, and the right thing to do to wear different colors, not to just wear black. And the advice that we have to give to people also matters. I did some research into this when we were writing Co-op's view. I had to write what would Co-op say, because one of a very frequently Googled search term is what to wear at a funeral. What should I wear to a funeral? And I was absolutely staggered when this came up, and this is on a website still to this day, where it's telling women to wear a knee-length skirt or dress and smart blouse and smart shoes. And I tell you what, I don't care how much I loved you, I would not be wearing a dress to your funeral. That won't happen with me. So we thought, this is not how you speak about what to wear. We changed it. Our advice, ask the family, ask the people who are arranging the funeral. They might even be very grateful for your phone call to break up the monotony of the day, that strange time between the day of the death and the day of the funeral. It's long, it's difficult, there's a lot to do, but also a lot of time as well. So ask them. And if you really feel like you can't ask the family what to wear at the funeral, then ask the funeral director, because they will probably know. They'll have had that conversation with the family. And you know what the most important thing is? If you don't feel comfortable asking the funeral director what to wear, or the family, just turn up. Doesn't matter. It's more important than you're there than what you wear. But the reason why I think this is an area that we should try and encourage people to be more open as well, and to share this information with people, is when I went to my friend's stepdad's funeral a few months ago, I had heard from my friend that she was wearing a black suit and she'd bought a black suit for her son. So I then just took the cue that, oh, okay, well, I'll wear something dark colours then. But Shirley, affectionately known as Posh Shirley in our circles, wore a really, really, really beautiful bright pink dress with a bright pink hat with flowers on. And that's because Richard loved flowers. And she looked great and he would have loved it, but she was the only person there that was wearing bright colours and she felt a bit silly. And I wish she didn't feel silly. We made sure that she didn't, but avoiding situations like that, just ask. People are usually grateful for someone to talk to around that time. And if they don't feel able to actually properly tell you, then, that's the funeral director. This came up on my own Facebook feed a few months ago. A friend's mum had died, and I was struck by the repetition and by the lack of personalization, and none of it is wrong. I don't want to say, if you've ever written this on somebody's Facebook status when they tell you somebody's died, that's okay. You did something, and saying something's better than saying nothing 100% all of the time. But we can do a little better. I mean, this is almost copied and pasted, even down to the love hearts. What would you put? What would my suggestion be? What you could put that's different? Well, quite a bit. You could share a memory if you knew them. I remember that time when we came home to your mum's and we were so drunk and she fell over and she made me tea, and, share a story about them. What do you remember? What was it? If you didn't know them very much, just ask them about them, not necessarily on their Facebook status, on a text, in Messenger, pop round, ring them up. This isn't about sort of how to talk about death in social media. This is what you could say. Most importantly, and something that I think people are afraid to do, is just say their name. Just say it. I'm so sorry about Phyllis. I made that name up. I'm so sorry to hear about whoever. Say their name, because I think sometimes hearing their name just can fill your senses, and it's important to hear it when somebody you love has died. It's important to hear their name, and that people and to see that people are not afraid to say their name. I forgot to tell you at the start that one of my little businesses before I joined Co-op Funeral Care was I had a small business writing bereavement cards, sympathy cards, they're probably more commonly known as, but without ever using the word sympathy. Who wants sympathy? Nobody ever asks for sympathy, do they? They want empathy. Or so I wrote a whole suite of bereavement cards and sold them to obviously card shops and funeral directors and online and stuff. Very hard to make a living selling selling cards, let me tell you, which is why I'm much happier working at Co-op. But this was quite a big seller. The design has absolutely dated. This was 5 years ago, but the idea is, let me tell you something about your lovely mum. So on the inside, you're prompted to write something about your mum, about their mum. And that might just be a lovely memory, or, gosh, I loved the way she used to bake, or, she always used to give me a lift to school. That was so kind. Whatever it is, say something. I guarantee people opening it would just have a little moment. And it's far better than just sorry for your loss, in my opinion. This card is also dated in terms of the design. Please remember, I do words, not pictures. But we called this the Dad's Pajamas card. Again, prompting people to share a memory. My favourite memory of your dad is whatever that might be. I bet they'd open that and it would be, potentially what a lovely thing to read about someone. This card was quite a big seller. I'm of the belief that people hear a lot. You know where I am if you need me. I'm here to help if you need anything. Let me know what I can do. Don't hesitate. All of those. And those are brilliant intentions, and they are what people need. So, they need to know that you're there. But what's sometimes better is to offer something, if you know what that might be. This was a very popular card because it said, I'll help you with the school run, when that's appropriate, of course, and to just do things and help out. If they're going to have a wake and they're catering themselves, why don't you offer to make a cake or a tray of sandwiches? Or if they are hungry, take some food round, if they're not able to cook for themselves. If they've got a dog, walk it, ask them to come with you. And either, walk and talk about the person, or walk in silence, whichever feels right. But be proactive in your suggestions is one of my suggestions. Again, the design is dreadful, I know, and the font is awful, I know. But I wrote a range of Christmas cards because a friend of mine whose husband died in May didn't get any Christmas cards that Christmas because too many people, I think, felt uncomfortable wishing her a Merry Christmas on that year because it's not going to feel merry. And it was also, I think, quite hard to write a card without putting his name on it for some people. And what do you say? You know, it was still so raw, so tough. So I wrote a suite of cards to send to people at Christmas. This one is a little bit fancy. It's a bit of a poem. Others were more simple. You know, just to let you know, I'm thinking of you this Christmas and that sort of thing. I think there should be more of these. I've also written a book, something I forgot to tell you about at the start as well. It's only a short book. It's a little poem. It was written for children who are going through bereavement. I think I touched on this earlier, where we find it difficult to talk to children. We don't know quite how to behave around them when something as serious as this happens. And they, in turn, don't know how to behave around us. And this book was about giving them permission. The whole book doesn't feature in here. I'm afraid it's not really available to buy. If anybody desperately would want one to give to somebody, or they think it would be useful for somebody, you can get in touch with me on Twitter at Content Helen, and I'll just send you one. I've got about 30 upstairs, but it isn't available in the shops. I'm going to read you just the first few lines and then the last page to show you what I mean. You can say it's not fair as you cuddle your bear. You can run round and round or not make a sound. You can burst into tears, tell people your fears. You can laugh till you cry without wondering why. You can say their name loud and remember their face. You can know that you're loved and in a very safe place. And the idea of that was to just let children know that there is somebody there and it's okay to talk about them, and it's okay to cry, and it's okay to be quiet, and however they feel, it's okay. We will support them in that. So this is where my talk usually ends, and it ends with a bit of a plea, which is to go out there and use honest words in your work and in your life. If you do have to work, you know, if you're a content designer and you're writing about this subject, please try and use honest words, and please don't be afraid of the topic. And if you know someone who's hurting, who's grieving, who's sad because they've lost somebody recently, ring them, text them, invite them for a drink, virtual or otherwise, whatever is safe at the moment. But don't forget them, and don't think that they don't want to hear from you, because they probably do. And if they don't, they'll tell you. Because I think the most important thing is that you say something, anything. You're not reminding them that someone died. You're reminding them that they lived. And that's crucial.